Okay, to keep moving with our basic descriptive statistics, one of the things that we have is we have our data. We found all 5 of our numbers that separate the data into quarters. So let's finish filling in our 5-number summary. Minimum was easily 42. Q1 happened to be 61. Q2, or the median, was 65. Q3 was 71 with a max of 81. So now we have our 5-number summary. This gives us a couple things. It does give us a measure of center, but it also gives us a measure of spread that says the data goes from here to here, which we could easily find a range. It also says that breaking the data into groups, you have the middle 50% in here between 61 and 71. Now, the easy way to display that would be to use some sort of a graphic, and that's exactly what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to turn that into a graphic. If I make a number line, now on this number line, I want to fit everything from here to here. So, to do that, I'm probably going to need to start down here at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then 90 would be on up if necessary. Now, using an even number line, standard old first, second grade number line, what we can do is we can begin putting our key components on this number line. The minimum is at 42, so I'm going to put a little dot where I think 42 ought to be. Now I'm going to draw above the number line so we can clearly distinguish it. Q1 is going to be at 61, so I'm going to put a little dot at 61. Then I have median at 65, that's in the middle. And then I have 71 for Q3, and finally 81 for the max. So I have my 5 numbers, I have my 5 dots. Here's what we're going to do. This is standard operating procedure. We're going to make a box. That box goes from Q1 to Q3. And we're going to take and put a vertical slash right down through the median. Okay, so we're going to take that. Then what we can do is draw a line from Q3 to the max, and one line from Q1 to the min. Now, what this does is this clearly shows that our data is bunched up. We have very low values, we have high values, but most of our data fits inside this box. In fact, half of the data, remember, the second quarter and the third quarter are in the middle. 50% of our data happens to fall between those two values. Our top moves up and our bottom moves down here, way down low. If we look at this number, it does make sense because we have 42 and we have 81, and the 65 is a lot closer to the 81 than it is the 42. Somewhat closer. Primarily our Q1 is way closer to our median than the 42 is. So we have this picture. It graphically displays how's our data spread up. Now, one of the things that we are going to talk about is called an IQR. IQR is interquartile range. An interquartile range is the range between these quartiles. Now, technically, we talked about each of these as a quartile, but between the ones that are labeled Q3 and Q1. That interquartile range, or IQR, would in our case be 71 minus 61, which is a value of 10. 10 is the value of our IQR. That's another way to measure our spread, how widely our data is spread, but just the inner 50%. If we're looking at this box plot, or box and whisker plot, because it has a box and, well, whiskers. So box and whisker plot, we also begin to ask ourselves, this down here, that seems an awful long way away. if this is a fairly small box, why is this so far down here? The question becomes, is it too far down there? Now, we've already talked about how some data values, if they're too far away from the rest of the group, can be considered an outlier. One of the ways we use the IQR is to determine what qualifies as an outlier. An outlier is 1.5 times the IQR from either Q1 or Q3. So in our case, 1.5 times 10 equals 15. So if I have something that is 15 beyond here, or 15 beyond there, it's just too far out. Now, if I were to take my 71 and add 15, I come up with 86. Our biggest value is 81. It comfortably fits inside the 86. So our 81 is certainly not an outlier. On the other end of the spectrum, though, our low value, our Q1, is 61 minus the 15. And if I take 61 minus 15, I should come up with 46. And so 46 is the lowest value that would be considered within our normal or acceptable range. Anything beyond that becomes an outlier. Well, we can already see that I have 42 is out beyond. Now, I also need to check the rest of my data. I say 42, that's out beyond. 45, that's out beyond. So, in this case, I have two different outliers in this data. So this picture is okay, but it doesn't indicate that this is too far out. What we would need is we would need to modify this picture to show which values are too far out. So let's draw another number line. And put the same values on it. I have 42, I have 61, 65, 71, and 81. And I still box my Q1 to Q3. Still slashing this. We've already determined that 80 is well within the range, so we're going to go ahead and connect that. But here's where we change. At this point, this 42 is an outlier. We also know that 45 is also an outlier. So I would only draw my lower whisker from whatever Q1 is to the last number that fits inside the acceptable range. Unfortunately, there are no values lower than Q1 that fit inside the acceptable range. So in this case, I'm not going to put a lower whisker on. I have two outliers. And no lower whisker, which means this data is much more tightly grouped up here, and if it weren't for these guys down here, this would be a much shorter picture than our original. Much more compact set of data because the two outliers had a significant effect. So, this is quite a bit of stuff that we've given you. Mean, median, mode, data, ordered data, finding the 5-number summary. Once you have the 5-number summary, being able to do a box plot, finding its IQR, determining which ones are outliers, 1.5 times the IQR, and then adjusting your box and whisker plot accordingly. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to give you a set of values, and what I want you to do is I want you to find all of this information on those values. So, one moment and we'll get your assignment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what I've done is I've gone to the cbssports.com and I've grabbed the weights right in here. Grab the weights of the top 19 in alphabetical order Denver Broncos from 2014. Now, I took those and I've put them in a list, and this list will be available for download right from your Canvas account, so you can write these down. You can print them out if you need. Your job is to find the mean, median, mode, range, 5-number summary, IQR, box plot, and outliers, if any, of the top 19 Denver Broncos. Left it at 19 because I do want you to do this using your basic calculator by hand, just so we can get everything understood in a very manual way. Now, I do highly recommend that you go grab, if you have a graphing calculator or if you're familiar with Excel, go ahead and throw things in Excel to double check all of your answers. Okay, so you can go ahead and use the technology you have available to you. I will also show you how to do this in Minitab when we return to class. So here's your homework, there's your data, there's what you need to find. Bring it next time. At this point you should probably hit pause so you can write this down and or download the file.